Welcome to the PAX Hospitality Podcast. I'm your host, Leon Kennedy, and today we're going to be diving in a little bit on the subject of identity. So this is a subsequent episode to the bumper one that we did around a model. The model was identity, product, consistency, and promo. And now this is kind of a little mini series within the podcast where we're going to focus on each of those stacks and talk a little bit about what they entail. And while the latter three are going to be fairly practical and model and tool heavy, it's pretty hard to accomplish that for the first one. So first one being identity, it requires a lot of reflection and a lot of like getting out of your comfort zone and going through some stuff that is pretty intangible in order to articulate what eventually becomes tangible. So doing a podcast on the actual tools and frameworks themselves was probably going to be pretty boring and probably create more confusion. So what we thought we'd do instead of that is actually speak to some amazing people that have done it. Speak to some great people that have been through the process, speak to some people that have done the hard yards and done the work to articulate identity, and just kind of look at how they did it, basically get a little bit of a walkthrough. So this might almost be a little bit of a quasi kind of onboarding session so into a business. And today we're sitting here with the legendary Joseph Abboud from Rumi. Welcome, mate.
G'day.
Rumi and Rocket Society, I should say.
Yeah, so we added on Rocket Society nearly 2 years ago now.
Yeah, and what an amazing journey. I mean, man, this is a really, really cool episode irrespective, because I feel like, we could probably interview you for 3 hours just about your journey and your story. And, we'll probably have to do that at some point.
That might be more of a reflection of how much you and I talk as opposed to whether there's anything good to say.
Well, I was thinking that as well. I don't think we've had a single meeting where we've kept it within the allocated time. Look, it's not a bad thing though, I mean, I certainly enjoy them. But I thought one thing that's really cool about this is speaking about identity, because, I mean, it's pretty amazing that Rumi's 18 years, coming up to 19, is it?
19 coming up to 20.
19 coming up to 20? Like, that is crazy, right? Like, there's people that are driving cars right now that weren't born when you opened Rumi.
Yeah, we have staff that often, and I don't know whether to feel good about, I say to them, think about your whole life.
Yeah.
And all that you've done. And I've been here.
Yeah, that's crazy. Essendon, we're still winning finals. Yeah. Oh, no, actually, I don't think that one's true. No, I think it's awesome, man. And it's like, what I think is just amazing is like, that's putting some incredible runs on the board, right? Like, I think, to be able to have a restaurant in a city like Melbourne for even more than 3 years, according to the stats, is pretty undoable. So you're already in that unicorn kind of category, which is amazing. But for me, I'll do my best throughout this chat to keep bringing us back to mission.
Sure.
Keep bringing us back to identity. And I feel like you're the perfect case study, not to, simplify all the amazing things that Rumi is, but from a certain lens, it's almost like a really cool case study to go, well, this is a business that has done so much, right? Like, to achieve as much as you've achieved in, just shy of 20 years, you could almost be forgiven for going, mate, fuck off with your mission shit. Yeah. Like, I don't need that crap in my life. Like, look, I've got a business.
Well, clearly we obviously had a very strong mission and identity. That's, why we've lasted so long.
Right.
Even though we hadn't articulated it.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the sort of thing, right? It's like, it's such a strong driving force. And for you guys, you were in touch with it, maybe not, like you said, it wasn't articulated, so maybe it wasn't, maybe it was a little bit more intuitive or subconscious, but clearly we're in touch with something that was such a potent driving force that enabled you to, be consistently successful for so long.
Yeah.
And I think that's amazing, right? And so I think why I say you're like a really unique case study is because you've been on both sides of the coin, where it's like, okay, you operated that way, then did a lot of work this year and trying to put it all into a slide deck that kind of made sense. And now you're on the other side where you've got this really, really compelling, mission deck that, it's a really awesome, like, I feel really privileged that I've been able to look at it and read it. And, you've even given me permission to use it as examples in some of my other meetings, which is...
That's just for my own ego.
Yeah. Yeah, right. So no, I think it's really cool to be able to chat with you today about that process. And like I said, even though we could go down, a billion wormholes talking about a lot of other things, I think this is going to be something that is really informative.
Cool.
So I guess if we, just to start with, right? So before maybe we talk, I guess we're doing this on the fly here. Should I go into context, or do you want to just maybe talk us through the mission and then we'll talk about how you arrived there?
Sure. So the purpose that we came to, and it's interesting, right? Because it's obviously, like I said, we obviously had it, but doing the exercise of teasing it out and articulating it is hard. Is probably not the right word, but maybe quite tedious and
tedious.
What are you? Why are you asking these questions? Isn't it obvious?
Yeah.
So and where we got to, and I think the articulation of this, I think, is probably maybe not completely settled, but ultimately the message is. And so to read it verbatim, the purpose of Rumi is to embody Middle Eastern hospitality with a contemporary attitude so that we can have a positive impact on our immediate and broader community.
So good.
So that's what we've articulated, and hopefully that's a clear enough message to get through to, from managers through to dishwashers, and then through to the guests and our community ultimately. Yeah.
It's such a great compass because, from a technical standpoint, that statement is very, very strong theoretically because it has the whole is to, so that bit. Often I think in a lot of businesses, they'll have, the is to bit worked out really well. Like if you look at your statement, it'll be the purpose of Rumi is to embody Middle Eastern hospitality with a contemporary attitude. And in a lot of cases, that's enough.
Yeah.
A lot of people go, well, that's dope. That's a sick statement. But without the so that, it doesn't really close the loop, and it's kind of it just leaves a lot of stuff that's still open to interpretation.
Yeah. And I've done a bit of this stuff before, and probably working with you was probably the first time that closing of the loop was brought up.
Yeah.
And I think that's quite important. I think especially in the modern day, I think why should we care comes into it. And I think this part is, the so that part, as you put it, is the reason I think why people should care or why they should buy in.
It's the classic rug that really ties the room together thing, It's to me, without that
is that because I'm Middle Eastern? That
that was a Big Lebowski reference. There'll be 3% of the listeners that actually get that. But in this, it's, that first part of the statement where it's okay, embody Middle Eastern hospitality with a contemporary attitude. If you don't tell me the second bit, I could get that wrong. Do you know what I mean? I could go out there and try and execute on that, but not necessarily in a way that really hits. And what I mean by that is that, embodying Middle Eastern hospitality, with a contemporary attitude, what is a contemporary attitude? See how you can suddenly go into these ways of okay, well, is that, lots of slang, or is that doing stuff that's kind of a bit in your face, or what is it? But when it's actually it's a contemporary attitude so that we can have positive impact on our immediate and broader community, it really frames it for me.
Yeah. It's so I suppose if we change that to so that we can have the edgiest Middle Eastern restaurant in Australia, the way you approach the purpose is very different. Isn't it?
Absolutely. So I love that. Okay, so can you, maybe what would be awesome here is to go through a little bit as to how you got there. What was I know obviously we did it together.
You made me do it.
Okay, so I'll give you the overview.
I would have just gone straight to the P&L and said, how do I fix this?
Go to the numbers. Well, I'll give you my perspective on it, right? And this would be kind of even just a cool chat for you and me to know, what were we both experiencing throughout that journey? Because from my perspective, there was a couple of really big ticket moments that it was that for me anyway, I was oh, okay, I'm really starting to get it now. The first one was, because remember we started working together and then you went away. You did that consulting gig in Dubai. Was it Dubai? Yeah. Sharjah, yeah. And so you were away for a little bit of time, but before you left, we sat down in the restaurant and you just gave me a whole big overview as to like your past and your history, and you told me all about, you know, following Rumi on the tour and whatnot. And then I remember, you know, so that was one moment that was really, really amazing for me because it was just so revealing. And then the second one was then when I was like, all right, now let's do a really structured story session. And I gave you some homework. And then we sat down in at Carlton Football Club and you told me your stories. You know, you shared your stories. And I was like, oh, wow, okay, this is like, it's really coming out now, just who you are as a person, because Rumi isn't who you are as a person, but it is definitely a byproduct of who you are as a person, right? So there's a lot of stuff that's intertwined there, which, you know, maybe an episode for another day is talking about the founder's dilemma with that. But in this context, I thought, yeah, to me it was really story driven. It was when you talked about those things. What was it for you though? Was it those as well, or was it other moments, or like what made you kind of arrive at these words? And yeah, talk us through that.
Yeah, look, I think again, I wasn't unfamiliar with the idea of this, and had even attempted it a couple of times before.
Okay.
But I think this time the in-depth discussion with you over a couple of sessions, and almost you know, almost you coming back with something and saying, how does this sound?
Right.
And then me finessing that as opposed to, you know, from a standing start. Sometimes I think when you are in your own head, or you're in a pattern of, you know, like I said, nearly 20 years of running the restaurant, some of those things you just either take for granted or you don't consider them, and you just sort of rock up and live them. So, yeah, so definitely that process of a couple of sessions together to tease it out. But I think more importantly, and I suppose this is what, you know, at risk of, you know, making this purely a PAX promotion, you know, I have done these exercises before with other people, and you sort of, you know, you go in, you sit in on a seminar or something else, and there's no one there to help you afterwards.
Right.
And, you know, when we first spoke about getting on board with you guys, that was the clincher for me.
Got it.
Is that there somebody there to help you complete that picture.
So funny you say that, because I found the exact same thing. Like when I first, you know, probably embarked on learning about this stuff and learning about strategy and business and purpose and whatnot, man, that was literally the same thing that struck me, because the first time I ever did any of this work as a participant was with a couple of mates trying to do our own personal identities and our own personal purpose statements and whatnot. And I think we used just like some generic Simon Sinek exercise or something, right? We went and sat down together and did it all. And we spent like 7 hours, man, the three of us, like sharing stories and doing all the work. And then we kind of got to the end of it, and then we were like, oh, fuck, now what?
Yeah.
Like, what do we do? Because I remember of the three of us, one of the guys just got it, like within, like that night was like, hey, this is my statement. We were like, shit, that's pretty good. The other, like the two of us that didn't do it, we took a while, you know, and what was the real clincher for us was after we did it and we were like, oh, well, cool. I guess we've now got these purpose statements, like, see you later, you know. Like, now what do you do? Yeah. We instead didn't do that. We were like, hey, why don't we actually like catch up once a week, you know, the three of us, and just like, you know, support each other and talk about, hey, how you going with that and what's happened? Because otherwise you can just forget about it,
absolutely.
You know. And it was actually really informative, because for us it probably was the difference. Like one of us had the idea to take the purpose statement and to plug it into a job description template, because we're like, well, that's where purpose statements go, you know. And then it's like, if you're going to try and talk about implementation, it's like, well, once you got the purpose, then what are the key result areas and what are the KPIs
to achieve that?
And we legit did that. So we filled out these like personal job descriptions for ourselves, and then we would just catch up every week, sometimes like twice a week, to just talk about, like progress and how you're going with it.
Yeah.
And that was actually the thing that got me to go and do an MBA and do all this stuff. So, so without that work, it would have been like a complete waste. And it just comes back to that point that it's like, it's one thing to be able to conceptualize stuff, but then it's the implementation bit that there's very little structure around.
That's the hardest part. And again, so that's what was appealing to me about working with you guys, is that there was someone there, not only in the process of articulation, but then also execution.
Got it. So can we dissect this a little bit?
Sure.
Cool. So like what I think would be really cool, and as best you can, if you can, I mean, obviously don't want you to be divulging any of the personal, nature of the stories and whatnot, but just if there's any headlines there that tie to this, like to me, one of the things that was massive was the story that you told me about generosity.
Yeah.
And just I'll totally mess this up, but you were talking about just, arriving in one city and having no money and not knowing where to go and whatnot. And some guy came. Can you tell it real quick?
So traveling in 2001, I traveled the old Silk Road.
Yeah.
And because I could speak Arabic, I managed to convince the border guards to let me cross over into from Turkey into Syria at a locals crossing. Normally tourists can't go through there. And probably for good reason, because you can't use a credit card, you can't change American dollars, you can't change Turkish lira. So to cut a long story short, I ended up on the Iraqi border of Syria with no money.
Oh, not ideal.
No, not ideal. But there's anyone who's travelled in the Middle East, despite the common perception, not for a minute did I think, I'm really in trouble here. This is going to go bad. I just knew that somebody would offer me a place to stay, or I'd have somebody would feed me.
Amazing.
Or something will work out, and basically this guy comes and says to me, what are you doing hanging around? Why are you sitting there with your bags? And I told him, and so he basically gave me enough money to make it to Damascus, 5 hours away, and told me how to go to this hotel and get some money out and send the money back to him.
Phenomenal.
Yeah, amazing.
Best story ever.
But I think not that uncommon either in the Middle East. Yeah, I was, to this day I regret I was so focused on paying him back and following the process that he gave me that I didn't bother doubling the money or sending him extra money I assume he got his money. I did what he told me to do,
Oh, I'm sure he did.
Yeah.
It was awesome though. Like when you told me that story, what clicked for me was you talked about embodying Middle Eastern hospitality, like right through all of our sessions together. Not necessarily in those words, but I was picking up on it a lot. But until you told me that story, I didn't fully get it.
Yeah, right.
Or I just had my own perception of it. But then when you told me that, it was like, oh shit, okay, yeah, this is you and this is your business and it's so there. And I'm wondering if you could, like, where does your mind go to if I asked you for some quick examples of like how you... I'll pay you back. Is there any examples of how you guys facilitate or provide that, or how you have over the years at Rumi? Like, what are some of the big stories that come to mind?
I think one of the, it's often a bit of a challenge with staff to convey that, one, we are a business, but also there are times where you can just pick up that this business transaction needs to be limited. Whether it's a charity that wants to do an event with us, or basically anyone. I don't know if I should say this because then we might get some random emails. And anyone that emails us from a school or whatever that wants a voucher for their fete or fundraiser, we just give it to them.
It's amazing.
And when new staff start, they're like, "Oh, there's a lot of these." I'm like, it is what it is. It's it's our place in the community, and happy to do it. And do people take advantage of it? I don't know, maybe, but that's I could have taken that guy's money and kept going.
Totally.
And then I remember one Christmas time somebody came in and we were making our own ma'anek Lebanese sausages at the time, and they wanted some sausages, and I'm like, they wanted like 15 sausages or 20 sausages or something.
Just for like home.
For home, for Christmas. I'm like, just take them. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, just take them, man. It's like, it's a kilo of sausages or something. Like, it's Christmas next week. Like, just take the bloody things and get out of here, So, not everything has to be, and again, to go back to Middle Eastern culture, there's no denying that when there's $1 to be made, it's there to be made, right? But you don't, one doesn't rule out the other.
Sure. They're not competing forces, right? If anything.
I remember sometimes accepting a price that somebody told me, and you could just see the look of disappointment on their face. Like, you really think I'm going to rob you like that? Like, you're supposed to, fight back. You're not supposed to just accept that price, So,
It's funny. I've had this funny thing my whole life, right, where because of my complexion, like any country I'm in, no one tries to swindle me. And even like I remember being in Morocco with a couple of friends, right, that are, both white. Yeah. And we got into a taxi and I jumped in the front and I didn't say anything. Yeah. Right? Like one of them said where we needed to go and I didn't say anything. And when we got to the end, the guy just actually charged us the normal amount of money because he must have thought I was their tour guide or something. And he didn't try it.
Was waiting for his kickback.
And I copped it later.
In a busy service, seconds count. Square's point of sale is there to streamline your operations from order flowing from the front of house to the back of house to tableside payments with Square Handheld. It's tech your staff will love to use and tech they won't need to fiddle with so they can focus on the best service. Head to squareup.com because service still matters.
That trip that you took, so you basically followed the Silk Road, is that how you put it?
Yeah.
And was that following the same steps that Rumi took? What was the connection there?
Well, I sort of discovered that on that trip that, Rumi was born in modern day Afghanistan, wrote his poetry in Persian and settled and died in where is now Turkey.
Right.
And that just sort of, highlighted to me that that borderless Middle East, that sort of area that up until fairly recently, the idea of a border was, pretty unusual. The border would be like, at the edge of the empire, so to speak, not just within this small zone that somehow became this national place. And so growing up in Australia, that really appealed to me because with Middle Eastern culture and specifically food, which is my medium, the similarities speak to me a lot louder than the differences.
Got it.
Sometimes there's like a slightly different preparation or one different ingredient, and somebody born in the north of Lebanon would not imagine that their food would be so similar to somebody born on the banks of the Euphrates River in Iraq. But they're just, to me, they're so similar. And some people might sort of even think that that's casual racism, but it's to me that I'm never offended by that.
Yeah,
sort of
got
thing,
it. But what's amazing is that like that idea, or it's almost like a really cool ideology around what people can experience at a table when it comes to food and what it can unlock. And you're right, it's like when you think about dining out in any city, it's also segregated by these cuisines. Like, that place in Clifton Hill that's like Hungarian and Indian? Like, wow, like that's really cool. I've never been there, but I always drive past going, what is going on there? Like, and apparently it's it's an icon.
Yeah, right.
But with that exception, right? Like everything is so like, if you're not really, really clear about we're doing this cuisine, then you're just going to be too obscure and whatnot. It's really segregated. But when you talk about, the way you approach food or the way a diner can experience food at Rumi, it really is this borderless Middle East idea, right?
And that's what we, what I've learned about doing anything Middle Eastern is no matter how much you try to avoid the politics, you can't.
Yeah,
so
sure.
it is I don't know if it's a it's a summary of another time, or just a broader hope, or or an example of what it could be, maybe.
But what really struck me though was when you first talked about it that way. I still remember it vividly because we were sitting there and you just said it, and I was just like, whoa, blew my mind, because I've obviously been a massive fan of Rumi forever.
Yeah.
And I feel like everyone in Melbourne knows Rumi, but they don't know that about Rumi.
Yeah, right. I didn't know that about Rumi.
But I remember saying to you later, I was like, man, that is it. Like that sentence you was saying, and you were just like, no one gives a shit about that.
Yeah.
Which is funny because it is that whole like, you're so in it, you can't see it.
Yeah,
right?
And that's the thing. That's why I sort of mentioned that word tedious before, because it's sort of a bit like, oh man, it's a bit weird you asking me, sort of like asking what you love about your kids or something like that. I don't know, man. Don't make me say that.
So I'm curious to know, right, like, you operated in a really connected but intuitively connected way for so long, did so many great things, then, went through the work of trying to articulate it. And what's the impact that having things written in a deck has been? Is there something specific that you can...
I think probably what I could say firstly is operating without it and without some of the things that we're working with you guys on is emotionally exhausting.
Oh yeah, that is such a good... that's such
and I'd never thought of it until I'm like, so I don't have to say this to every single person, and I don't have to find a way to get through to every single person now because it's been articulated, and that doesn't sort of absolve you from it, but it puts in the framework that takes away a lot of the digging,
It's such a... Man, I've never actually considered that consciously. I've definitely felt it, in previous organisations that I've been a part of or businesses that I've had, where, you're right, it's such a relief. It's like before creating the document, it's like, fucking hell, every person, I've got to go through the whole thing. And it's like when you're trying to tell a joke multiple times and get some mileage out of the joke. After a while, it's like, I got to stop using this. And it's like you use up all your stories and you're just like repeating yourself. But like what I found was a clincher was once it was all really clear in a deck. To me, there's two parts of trying to engage someone, like philosophically or even in terms of purpose and that sort of chemistry. And one part is you need to be coherent, in what you say, but then you also need to be compelling. And the coherent bit is like, okay, well, that is kind of black and white, right? Like it either grammatically makes sense or it doesn't, but the compelling bit is a little bit different for each person. And what I found after having the deck, what I found was really good was that, okay, I didn't have to spend as much time on that first bit. It was like, hey, let's walk through this together, bang, 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 hit on all the notes. It was pretty well rehearsed after a while.
Yeah.
Kind of like, the spiel in a sequence of service, whatever you want to call it. But then once it was done, it really enabled me to spend time with the person as a person.
Yeah.
And get a sense of what were the bit that you instantly get a sense of what they vibe on and what, doesn't quite hit the mark or what questions they've got. And then it actually turned around completely for me because it wasn't like, I'm just going on like a stuck record. Every time I talked about it, I was having a unique conversation.
Yeah.
And every time I got to learn more about it, I got to learn more about them, they got to learn more about me, and it actually became like one of the most exciting parts of my life.
You don't have to build to ground zero first. You can just start, there.
Exactly. Like the basis is there, you just furnish it individually.
Well, I think that I think the same applies for most procedures and, standard policies of sorts, that they don't just become the set and forget and, now that it's written down. But what I've come to understand is that, if I go away for 2 weeks and somebody new starts, if I'm not there to share that story, there's something in place now that they can get even as a simple sort of human interaction, they can get a picture for who I am just by what they read about what the place is about.
Yeah.
Whereas I think it's pretty common in Australia as well. Get a this thing that the boss or the purpose of the place is just to milk everyone and everything.
Right. No, those times are gone. When you think about what matters most to Gen Z now, it's easy to get found out if you're not legit and authentic about your purpose. I think something else in there that is really, really, I think, astute is that observation, right? That like you can't be there to work side by side with everyone. Anymore. You can't. And I'm not saying from a wanky business school like scalability thing. Scalability or scale isn't just about revenue hitting millions of dollars and sites and expansion, right? Scale is also like, the mission can scale too. Right? You might find that, hey, for me, it's right? It's the impact on our immediate community that really matters to me. And scale for Rumi might not be, a Rumi in every state around Australia or whatever, or a product. It could just be that maybe you're working more actively with the community. Maybe you're mentoring younger chefs. Maybe you're doing and if you're doing those things, you're not in the restaurant every night in every service to be conveying this stuff. So
it's interesting because we talk about this as a, as in this is not for me. Like I'm the founder. I don't need this. But it actually, the most important person this guides is me.
Yes.
And so having that broader that positive impact on the immediate and broader community has then now it's a feedback loop, right? So I have to live that, make sure I live that.
Yes.
And so we're going to implement next year like a quarterly charity dinner.
Awesome.
Where people can submit their charities and we'll choose, I don't know based on what yet, but we'll choose the one we like the sound of.
Awesome. and get him in.
And do a dinner like in our event space.
Love
for
that.
Up to 50 people or whatever.
Yeah.
And we can just do that dinner for them, and that can be their fundraiser, and they can charge whatever they want. And if we do one of those a quarter, I think that really. It fulfills this loud and clear, because I think we do a lot of these things around the place. Like, we'll always have staff on, young staff or whatever that, should they really be there? Maybe not. If you were talking solely based on performance, maybe you'd get rid of them. But, we do have a responsibility to the broader community. And so having those guys on board, but, having something a bit more, a bit clearer is something that we're going to look at doing, and this has been even sort of impactful for me. What I hear in what you said then is it's about the tangibility aspect of it, right? And but also what I really heard in what you said is that this isn't just a compass for the employees of the business, it's accountability for you too. Absolutely.
But it's not just about accountability, it's also about clarity, because like, again, as a founder, right, like no one can talk about this stuff the way you can. Right. The one thing as a founder that you can't delegate is inspiring as many people as you can according to this mission. And it's like, it's easy to sort of just, if you've got that in your back pocket, any meeting that you go into, it's an easy thing to draw on. Like I remember you went on the radio like a couple of weeks after you'd started to do this. And you instantly in the interview just started talking about this stuff. It was so good.
Well, that's what I said. Like, it's we talk about it as if it's not for the founder, but it's actually even though it comes from me. Having that articulated helps me share that experience or share that message. But I think one of the things that people probably really struggle with, which is what I did, is the concern for a lack of authenticity. And if there's anything that Rumi is, it's authentic, right? Like we really try and, cut the bullshit, really. And so the idea of having a mission statement that was a corporate jargon and didn't reflect who I am, that would be, or more importantly, what Rumi is.
I mean, it's such a valid concern, and so many people have it because they fear, like, it's weird, man. It's like things that just happen intuitively have a certain romance about them. And then it's like, hang on, I've got to turn on the other side of my brain.
That's right,
and I go, now this just doesn't feel
Well, that's
good.
the thing with the community, right? So I know that we have a positive impact on the people around us and the people we come in contact with. But now with this, I know that, there's almost an obligation to make that visible.
I mean, but I think what I love about it though is that idea that trying to take something that is really, really creative and turn it into something that is just a bit easy to understand, most people's fear is, well, I don't want to dilute it.
Yeah.
And whether that's through, authenticity or whether that's through I'm going to lose the magic or whatever, it's like a lot of people have that concern. And I just think for me, I've never really thought about it as consciously as that. But as a person on the other side of the table who's always trying to, get you bloody guys to fucking say it, I'm always going, how do I navigate this? And I think the way that I've tried to do that in the past when people have had those similar concerns is understanding you're not doing this as a branding agency. You're not doing this to produce a billboard that will speak to all the people external to your company. It's about, starting off saying this is not customer facing. This is purely for you and your team. And it kind of gives people a bit more liberty to be like, okay, well, I can just be a bit more.
Yeah, I think that definitely changes it. When we spoke about that, because sometimes you do think you need to come up with some sort of jargon or some sort
how's
of
this going to sound in a as a motto, or how's it going to look on a t-shirt or whatever. But the irony is though, if you just ignore the external stakeholders for a second and you just focus on the internal stakeholders, and as a yardstick, you go, is this statement in its current format going to help me do my job better? It doesn't matter where you sit on the pecking order. Wherever you are on that org chart, is it going to help me do my job better? And it's a yes, then you're on the right path. And the irony is that if you nail it from that context around what makes sense for the internal stakeholders of this business, then they can actually go and portray that to the external. And what you often find is, even though the purpose of it wasn't to produce this outcome, is that you get this really authentic, amazing content that works, and it suddenly becomes the billboard. Anyway, you kind of hit this kind of critical mass of people that just start to interact with your brand and understand it, in that vernacular. And then it sort of coins some of the best marketing material ever.
Well, it's if you get it right, it sort of affirms the authenticity as opposed to dilutes it.
And it creates that inner stitching and that thread for all of your comms, right? Like, for socials and for everything. It's like that should then become the anchor and the compass.
Well, the other thing I've sort of come to see it as ultimately is it's a recipe, right?
Right.
Like if every time you wanted to make something in the kitchen, if you had to start from scratch, and say to someone, oh, look, I think you put about this much in it. I'll have to make it with you every time at the start. So whereas now you can make it with them the first time, but all the measuring out is done and the finessing is all that's left to do.
Man, that is such a good analogy. Like, I love that.
I'm a chef, man.
I love it. So, I'd love to, we spent a lot of time just talking about the purpose. The truth is identity comes back to the entire mission, and a mission deck should effectively be like your purpose, your values, your brand promises and your vision and a little bit of ethos. And then, really talented people like Michael and Lauren can take that stuff and turn it into really practical guidelines and whatnot. We're going to completely run out of time, but I guess, when you look at your values and, some of your brand promises, like I love, you don't mind me sharing this, obviously,
go for
it. I love that, your number one brand promise at Rumi is generosity. And like, how true is that? Like one of my observations from, doing the audit and interviewing everyone and talking to the staff was, one of the funny themes that came up in everyone's interview was this idea that you make everything too cheap.
Yeah, right.
If I could change one thing, because I always ask the question, if you could wave a magic wand, so many people would go to that and be like, I'll just put the prices up, man. Everything's so cheap. Then after we went through this deck, no one has said that again.
Yeah, right.
So that's what actually is in our DNA.
Staff love putting the prices up.
Yeah.
If I listen to staff every time they put the prices up, it'd be like about $700 to the
Well, do you know what's funny though? How ironic is this? Usually it's the other way around in most businesses, and that just speaks a lot to the fact that generosity is at the core of what you're trying to do.
Yeah.
I'm just curious though, is there anything
Let's not overstate that, because like I said, I am Lebanese, so when there's a dollar to be made, it'll be made.
But you know what? You're doing it.
We can all win.
Yeah, exactly. Positive impact on the immediate broader community. I love it. Is there anything, just maybe we can finish off on this, like is there anything within, your values or the brand promises that stick out more potently for you? Or is there anything in there? Is there an example of something that's happened in the last few weeks that you kind of go, oh yeah, I'm glad I wrote that down.
I think the origin part, I think, is pretty important. You know,
which is one of your values.
Yeah, it's really valuing the origin of, in this particular case, cuisine. Isn't about being traditional. It's more about understanding where it's come from, and then what you can do with it. So I've always taken the approach to the food at Rumi, in particular, that if it's not at least as good as the original, we're not going to just change it for change's sake. Like it's just really becomes just ego, really. Like, what do you just
end up obscure.
You know, if you make kibbeh out of duck, I'm not sure there's too many people that can tell me that the duck one tastes better, and all this incredible effort, and it's like, well, what for? Just for your own entertainment, ultimately,
Just feel like I spun it.
Just So the origin is pretty important, that we value that origin when we're approaching the food, and then also with the service as well, and how we do it. It's based in that Middle Eastern hospitality and that Middle Eastern tradition.
I mean, for me, let's just say, on being on the customer side of things, I think where that becomes really potent is understanding the story behind the food, because without a mission deck like this, without sitting down with everyone on the team and explaining how important this is, you can't then really blame someone for just coming and putting a dish down in front of me and walking off. Or just telling me literally what it says on the menu. Whereas this actually encourages everyone to not just be like, oh, here's your whatever. It's actually like, hey, just so you know, this is how you should eat this, or this is where it comes from and why.
So again, it comes back that this deck serves me first and foremost, because if this is what I've sat down and thought about when I'm in the swing of things and less focused on that sort of task that you and I did together, I can come back to this and say, when I've got the headspace, what is it that I believe this place is about? And this deck now helps that.
Yeah, amazing. Man, this is awesome. I feel like I could just go through every slide with you, but I better cut it short, because are we already way over? Yeah, okay, my bad. Hey, let me just ask you one last question, just to throw a question at you without notice. Like, what do you, when you think, a little bit into the future, now that you've kind of, you're coming up to 20 years, you've got some of this stuff written down and whatnot, what's something that you're kind of seeing either in the next 3 months, 12 months, or 5 years that's resonating with you?
I think probably what excites me really is that, should I have a thought of doing something else, that I know that, the home base is looked after.
Got it.
Because I've done other things in the past where this hasn't been articulated and as the procedures haven't been in place, and taking my eye off Rumi to do other things has been, I feel extremely lucky that it survived the neglect, really.
Got it.
So now I hope that with these things in place, should I want to do something else, whether for myself or more business or whatever, that Rumi is not neglected. That it's
love that.
After.
It's a pretty good safeguard. Yeah, awesome, mate. Thanks so much for this. It's been really, really good, and I think for a lot of not just other founders, I think other founders listening to this will get a lot out of it. But I think just even for individuals that work in organisations where this stuff isn't written down, it hopefully will encourage them to ask for it, because it really needs to. Like, it really separates, that feeling of clarity and that connection and the cohesion and whatnot. So, thanks for coming on and sharing your insights and your story.
No, it's been pretty easy. Thanks.
Awesome. Cheers, mate.
Thanks for listening. Show notes, takeaways, and tools are available via our website, pax.melbourne. The PAX Hospitality Podcast is produced by PAX and Crate Creative. Support for this podcast comes from Square and Brunswick Design and Innovation. Our music is produced by Patricia Heath and Matthias Vestergren.